she talks about his nipples. I mean, it's sexy. So,
Okay. Okay. Speaking of nipples,
hi everyone, it's the Book Cougars, two middle-aged women on the hunt for a good read. I'm Emily.
and I'm Chris, and we are on Zoom today recording, obviously. We're not side by side.
Side by side in the internet world, I guess.
Yes,
Better than nothing. Always prefer to be in
indeed.
person.
Yes. Yes, but
We're
here
here
we
with
are.
some,
Happy Friday.
yeah, Friday reads, and also just some news about the podcast. Should we start with that? The person we just talked to?
Yes. We just talked with the editor of this fantastic anthology, Jessica Pride.
Yeah, Black Love Matters.
Yes, and the subtitle is Real Talk on Romance, Being Seen, and Happily Ever Afters. Focus.
You know,
There we go.
and after we talked about it, or after we talked with Jessica, Chris and I were talking about how it's kind of tricky to talk about an anthology. I feel the same way about, like, I don't know if
Hmm.
you've ever had a book club where you chose a short story collection. It can
Right.
be kind of tricky because you're not talking about something with like an arc, a specific arc.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's 14 different essays in this collection by 13 different contributors. So the great thing about this anthology is just like the breadth of it. It covers a lot of different personal experiences and theoretical experiences, not necessarily theoretical experiences, but um, looking at the structure of racism and even within the topic of love. I really appreciated Deshaun Harrison, I believe, was the writer who talked about Bell Hooks's definition of love, which is a really high standard to live up to. And according to her, should I look that up? According to Bell Hooks's definition of love, most of us haven't had that. And so much romance doesn't have it. Well, traditional romance. I think more contemporary romance is trying to offer more love within the romance. So Bell Hooks, and this is on page 212, she writes in her book All About Love that love is composed of several different ingredients: care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, and trust, as well as honest and open communication. And, I mean, a lot of romance tropes rely on that withholding of information or communication breakdowns, I guess you could say. So, talking about, I mean, and this is about his essay or their essay, I'm not sure their pronouns, was about Black love, not necessarily romance, the
Right.
genre, right?
Yeah. I mean that we're, part of why we were interested in this anthology collection is because of our focus on reading romance this year. And so it got on our radar because of that. And so it does talk about that. Jessica she's a podcaster and she writes a lot about the romance genre. And she has her own essay in this collection as well,
Yeah.
talking about her marriage and to a white man, which I thought was a really interesting perspective to read about with love as well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And she talked a lot about trends in TV commercials and
Hmm.
how it's like with car commercials, especially, it's like the white man with the black wife, and then the ambiguously raced children in the back seat, and
Yeah,
how you don't see a lot of it with a black man and a white woman at this time.
right. Yeah, yeah. And she's a black woman with a white man. So she looked at that and she just addressed a lot of what we would call maybe tropes in advertising, tropes
Hmm.
in novelizations.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
and then also statistics, like, right, that like
Mhm.
most black women are least likely to marry outside of their race, whereas white men are more likely to,
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
was what she talked about. So, I mean, there's so many personal experiences in here, um, regarding race and sexuality and identity. It's a really great collection, and I've been jumping around a lot, and I know you have too, Emily. I kind of zeroed in on the essays that had queer in the title because that's where my interests lie. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I went
really
to the
cool
Jasmine
collection.
Guillory one that had food in the title because that always
Yes.
gets my attention. Her novels have
Hmm.
a lot of food in them, but she
Yeah.
also had, I think, a good cross section of authors and the people who write in have different focuses in their writing. So it's
Right.
a great
Yeah.
collection. Our conversation with Jessica will be on episode 202, which drops on Tuesday. What is that? The 27th?
27th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put all that information in the down below. Speaking of down, I always feel a little naughty when I say down below, which might be a good
Okay.
segue for Beverly Jenkins' novel.
Oh my
Beverly
gosh.
Jenkins' novel Indigo. We're both
We
reading
both,
it.
yes,
Yeah,
focusing on here. So yeah, this is our first
listening.
quarter read along pick for our year of reading romance, Beverly Jenkins Indigo. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm on page 106 at this point.
I'm on 54. So far,
Right.
it's already sexy. Like there's a little bit of salve rubbing on body parts. Salve. I know how to say that word. There's an injured man she's taking
Yeah.
care of, and
Yeah, she's rubbing it on a wound.
yes, yes,
Just so
still
your
sexy.
imagination doesn't go too
Oh,
down
my
below.
imagination is still going wild. She talks about his nipples. I mean, it's sexy. So,
Okay. Okay. Speaking of nipples,
yes.
the Iliad has kind of really brought nipples to my mind in a different way because I just did the buddy read. I kind of did the buddy read with a group of friends of Emily Wilson's new translation of the Iliad, and there are so many instances where the warriors are, putting their spears through other men's nipples. Um,
Wow.
so a lot of nipple action going on in there,
That's
and
not sexy nipples, Chris.
no,
This
it's
is
not.
sexy
But
nipples.
but I have a feeling like it's all about audience, right? And like if the Iliad
Yeah.
was an oral story that was being told, you have to have something to grab different people. And I think children of all through back in time, I mean, who knows? Did cave children giggle when they heard the word nipple if
I think
everyone
it
was
makes you
running around
grab your
naked?
nipples. Like maybe they grabbed their nipples and that got them back in the game. I don't know. I mean, people have a lot of reactions around that area.
Yeah,
So,
it's so
yeah,
sensitive.
it is
Yeah.
sensitive. Yeah.
So anyway,
We digress.
I'd rather think about salve and nipples than spears and nipples.
Yes, for amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So moving along.
It's a romance novel, historical romance novel. And it has a thread about the Underground Railroad, which
Right.
is really
In
interesting.
Detroit. Well,
Right.
around Ann Arbor,
Yeah.
Michigan. And yeah, it's really
Yeah.
fascinating. And I feel like I'm, learning things about that time period.
Me too.
And how the
Yeah.
Underground Railroad operated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to put the book down several times and write things down, which I always like when I'm reading historical fiction. So,
Yeah.
oh, and
And
we
there's
should
one
mention
thing.
that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing that I hadn't ever really thought about is that there's a scene where Indigo, her name is actually Hester Wyatt. Um, as a child, she loved doing what she was doing. And she was with one of her girlfriends doing the work that they were doing. And, you know, they get kind of crushed because one of the adults tells them that they're slaves. And they didn't really understand that. And I just thought how crushing. I mean, I know Black parents are having really difficult conversations with their children now with the way things are in the policing in America. But when you're enslaved and it's for life, and it's hereditary as it was in America, like how crushing
Hmm.
would that be
Yeah. Yeah. I
to
mean, I
have that
understand.
conversation and then to be on the
Right.
receiving end of that conversation?
Right. And I understand why parents would try not to do that, and try
Right.
to, I mean, so that's a complicated thing. I mean, that'd be a fun thing for us to talk about um, when we're meeting on March 3rd to talk about Indigo in
Right.
our Zoom conversation,
Yeah.
because I think as a parent, there's a desire to make your kid's life full and rich, even with restrictions. When I think about that movie, Life is Beautiful, where that took place during the Holocaust, where they're in a concentration camp and the dad is trying to make his children's life really rich and fun, as if they're not in a terrible situation. So
All right.
interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to that part of the novel. I'm curious to get
Yeah.
there.
It's just a
Yeah.
small bit. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
small, a short thing that said, but it really made me pause.
Yeah.
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 Can I show you a fun book?
Yes.
Jump for Joy. This is a very sweet little children's book about a little girl who's looking for a dog and a dog who's looking for a person.
Aw.
And it's really sweet. And the illustrations, so it's by Karen Gray Rule, and the illustrations are by Hadley Hooper. And there's a lot of black and white, like the cover suggests, but with a little bit of color. And
Yeah.
then there's
Nice.
also some pages where the color really erupts. And so they're both looking for a
Mhm.
dog or looking for a person. So they start to build them themselves with various items like ferns and bark and snow. And then eventually they find each other. It's really sweet. And when they find each other, that's when the book erupts with a lot of color.
Oh, beautiful. Great concept.
Yeah. And it just came out the end of January. Look at can you see the little footprints on the back?
Yeah. Cute.
Um, and thank you. We should thank the publisher. I think it's Astra Young Readers for sending us a copy. It's so sweet.
Very
If you're
cute.
looking for a nice children's book, highly recommend.
Very cool. Well, the other thing I'm reading is an audiobook. Um, The Vanishing of Carolyn Wells by Rebecca Rijo Berry. Here is the cover. That's not going to focus in on it, is it?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, there we go. Um, I've been using my bookmarks that you can use on the Libro app and probably other audiobook um, apps. And I realize, like, when I go to a bookmark, it doesn't go back to where I left.
Mm.
So that's kind of interesting. I have to look. I think I'm in chapter 7 at this point and really enjoying it. Carolyn Wells wrote in so many different genres, and I like how the author is focusing on genres per chapter is kind of the flow that's happening at this point. And she'll say, with things going on in Wells's life, she'll say, but more on that in chapter, X,
Ah,
because it's, chronologically, because, so many biographies, they go chronological order, but
right.
like, how do you write a biography of a writer who wrote 180 novels and wrote screenplays for movies and poetry and magazine articles and was so involved in the literary world? So I have to get my hands on a paper copy
Yeah.
because she quotes Wells a lot. She was known for writing like ditties and rhymes and things like that. One of her first published pieces, I just want to share this because it reminded me of that book, Pockets. Do you remember that
Oh, yeah.
book? Here it is. I haven't read it yet, but it's an intimate history of how we keep things close. Hannah Carlson,
Yeah.
about pockets in women's fashion. And so this was a thing that Wells wrote in Vogue in 1893. It's called a chromo in prose. And it's about a girl who wants to wear an old gown that she has because it has a pocket. And
Oh.
the line that the Rebecca quotes is, What do we want? Pockets and dresses. When do we want it? 130 years ago. And she wrote that in, 1893. Kind of
Oh
funny.
my gosh, and we're in 2024 and you still hear women talking about that all the
Yeah.
time.
Or you
Yeah,
have women's pants with like these little tiny pockets.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
like, what's the point of that?
yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Or I have a pair of jeans that like have fake pockets. There's no pockets. They
Jeez.
look like they have pockets, and I bought them and I came home and I was like, I can't put my hands anywhere.
Yeah. It's like I need pockets. I need a good
Yes.
back pocket or a good front
Yep.
pocket. Like one or the other. Yeah, especially
I
with
like
your
both.
phone,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pockets galore. Yeah.
Oh, the struggles we women have.
Ah, so many. Well, I also wonder if you get a paper copy if there's any pictures.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and the references, I just, because she mentioned so many other writers and people that Wells met and was involved with and everything. So, yeah, I need to
Yeah.
get my butt to a store
Yes.
and
Yes.
purchase that. Yeah.
So the other book I have in my hands is Small Odysseys, Selected Shorts, 35 New Stories. It has an introduction by Neil Gaiman, and then it's edited by Hannah Tinty. And I don't know if any of you listen to Selected Shorts. I've always loved it. It's out of Symphony Space in New York City, where they have famous people, actors, perform short stories just by reading them aloud, standing in front of a microphone. And I honestly can't remember how I used to listen. I think it was just through my public radio station. Now they have a podcast, so you can listen via your podcast app. But this is celebrating 35 years of selected shorts at Symphony Space. And part of how this collection came to be is during the pandemic in 2020, when everything shuttered. I think it gave them time to work on this because that was right around the 35th year. And I've read the introduction by Neil Gaiman, and he talks about, growing up in England and being a family that listens to the radio. And then when he moved to the States, how he started listening to selected shorts and then eventually had his work performed. And Hannah Tinty tells the same story, and she's the person who edited the collection. So far, what I've done is read through the whole thing. I looked at the table of contents. It's really interesting because they have it split up into 3 sections: departures, and then journeys and new worlds. Kind of hard to see. And then at the end of each short story, the author talks about the story. So there's a little part that says, can you see that? From the
Mm-hmm.
author.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I went through public service announcement. I was waiting to have my mammogram the other day. Get your yearly mammogram. And I thought this would be the perfect thing to bring in. And I went through, I had a long wait, and I read all of the from the authors.
Oh,
And it was
interesting.
really cool. And now I'll start to go back and read the short stories. So this is going to be a collection that I can dip into for my year of reading short stories every Monday.
Very cool. So are you going to read them like chronologically or are you going to pick and choose?
I think I'm probably going to pick and choose by author. One of the things I'm enjoying doing is taking the chance to read either authors whose work I really love and haven't read in a while, or authors who I've always wanted to read
Right.
and haven't had a chance. So some of the ones I recognize in here were Louise Alberta Uria, Jess Walter, Elizabeth Strout, Amy Bender, who I love. But then there are people like Omar El Akkad, who I wanted to read his book and never did. So I'm like, ooh, I'll jump in and read his short story. There's a really good swath of authors represented here. I'm really excited. Victor Laval's in here. And Melinda was just talking about his book last week, and I've never read one of his. So I thought, ooh, I'll read that. And his is called Bedtime Story, which sounds kind of intriguing. So, although I think he's a little bit of a creepy writer, so it's intriguing, but also maybe scary. But
Yeah, a little horror-ish or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe.
I
Yeah.
love the cover though. And thank you to Algonquin who sent this to us back in 22. But it is out and available everywhere now. So
Very cool. All right,
yeah.
everybody. Well, we've been kind of chatty today.
Yes.
But we always love to hear what you're reading. If you want to leave a comment below.
Yes. I would love to know if any of you have favorite short story writers. Please let us know. And if you're reading Indigo, reminder, March 3rd is our Zoom conversation. We still have like, I think 2 spots available. If anyone's interested, email us at bookcougars@gmail.com. Other bit of information, our Patreon reading salon is on Sunday. The email will be going out today. If you are a Patreon member at the $5 level or higher, you're automatically invited to join us for an hour of book chat on Sunday at 7 o'clock.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right, everybody. Happy reading.
That's
hard to do that
when we're not
synchronous
together.
over Zoom. I know. People know what we mean.
Happy reading. Happy reading.
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off.
Shut up.
All right, I'll stop recording on that note.